This diesel Jetta was my first car, so when I decided to use its engine in my Triumph Spitfire project, I naturally wanted to give the car a proper send-off. To have some fun and beat on it, I decided to take it on the Detroit Gambler 500, a rally for driving $500 and under cars around the state on and off-road. This was not a $500 or under car when I first got it, but I figured it would be by the time I got through with it. Of course, the Volkswagen Jetta is not known for its off-roading capabilities. To help it out, I provided some extra ground clearance with a 2.5-inch suspension lift and some 29-inch all-terrain tires. These exhaust adapters are the only $6 I spent on the suspension. They almost fit around the bottom of the front struts. The extra height has to be added to the bottom in my case, so that the bigger tires won't hit the coils. Here I'm welding on a pipe that will provide the lift. The obvious solution here would have been just to weld the pipe straight to the bottom of the strut, but I was not entirely sure it wasn't full of compressed nitrogen that would spew molten steel at me when I made a continuous weld. This way, with a shim for a snug fit, the extension is pretty much mechanically held in place. A few tacks keep the strut from pulling out or rotating without too much risk of melting through and exploding. The pipe requires a shim as well to clamp back in the steering knuckle. This feels like a good time to say that nothing about what I'm doing is how you should do this. I just refuse to buy the proper parts because it only has to work for a few days. So the front lift required one part per side, but the rear requires a spacer for each coil and each shock. The coil spacers will function pretty much like these Legos. They rest in the circular depression meant for the coil, and the coil rests on top, kept from scooting around with a peg. Now if you're thinking, I know he's not about to put wood in his suspension, you'd be wrong. In fact, this was not enough wood, so I glued more wood to it. The steel plate provides the last 1/4 inch of lift and a solid backing that won't squish under the weight of the car. 8 wood screws seemed like about enough to resist any shear forces. Really scraping the bottom of the barrel for material here, but I already went $6 over the suspension budget. Making the shock spacers was pretty straightforward. They just moved the mounting holes down in effect. Thank you, Internet, for showing me this. I was just going to put it back in the same spot and max out the travel. Off camera, I turned the coils around a bit so they gripped the spacer more securely. I had to drill out the shock mount holes for some standard bolts. Tightening these bolts down squashed the shit out of my spacers, but that's probably fine. I bought a set of $50 Craigslist tires and had them mounted to the original rims. I ended up replacing one at Detroit because it was unbalanceable and violently shook the car for the 10-hour drive. The rear set seemed to fit okay, but the front needed some extra clearance. Cutting the plastic bumper with this abrasive wheel smelled like cancer. Would not recommend. At this point I drove it around a bit to see where the tires rubbed, because they were never not going to rub. You can see it has at least as much ground clearance as my Geo Tracker now. The front tires hit the footwells a lot, so I beat them with a hammer until it stopped making a difference. They do still rub. The rears just hit the corner of the plastic bumper, so I made some more carcinogens and removed them. After a long, noisy, rough drive and a late night of finishing touches at my friend's house, the day of the gambler came. Had to do a side-by-side with the stock Jetta. I think I should have done this years ago. All the gamblers met at a Walmart in the morning, where we bought a random air filter to jam on the shitty snorkel rigged up the night before with a plumbing donut. Didn't even need duct tape.
Okay, regular car.
We don't take kindly to your type around here.
The route took us around the city before heading north to the trails.
What the hell? He literally gets 800 dualies on that car. Holy shit. That's a lot of work. They put a lot of work into that.
It had rained a lot, so there was mud to splash through, but northern Michigan is full of sand, so there was a lot of that. There would be more video from inside the car, but apparently a certain passenger couldn't figure out how to point the camera or push the record button when it counts. Tom.
Oh, not that quick! Okay, that quick. Oh.
This mud was swallowing up two-wheel drives no matter how recklessly they charged. Couldn't keep it out of the ruts. We heard there could be worse ones up ahead and decided to go back through. like that noise.
That doesn't sound good.
Hope that's not a CV shaft. I need those. Now the next clip cuts in right as the car smacks down into those same ruts. Consider this foreshadowing.
He's buried.
He's going left.
Oh,
He's going left.
Go left. Got it.
Yeah!
Yeah.
What the
Go, 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 go.
Well, I think we got it out of it.
That's a problem. Well, we broke 3 things now, but only one of them was important. So, we're on a little unplanned adventure.
Yeet.
Funny story, I was going to make a skid plate to prevent exactly this, but I ran out of time and had to choose between that and the paint job. Still won't say I made the wrong choice. So to get going again, we drained the oil and got food while we waited for it to stop dripping enough to stick some JB Weld in the hole. Oh, now it wants coolant. Do we want to give it coolant?
No, I want to go home.
Alright, let's get the fuck out of here.
Alright. We
All
were
right.
actually just about to pull
Light
off
up
the
the
next
wheel.
exit and check it too, and we didn't make it to the exit. We didn't make it a single exit. So
The shock is fine. Weirdly. So yeah, that put an end to our trip. The front end shook increasingly violently after we got on the road, and 3 engineers didn't think to check if the lugs were loose. In all fairness, they were fine for 3 hours of highway driving and a few more on the trails since the last time the wheel was off. I had to buy an expensive-ass plane ticket back, and my dad hauled the car home after a business trip. It was a stupid mistake that brought the car down, but it's the sort of mistake you only make once, and hey, the $6 suspension was fucking fine. I don't think I got enough fun out of this lifted version of my car just yet. Want to do some dumb shit before I steal the engine, like jump it and detonate the airbag to launch something, maybe set it on fire, I don't know. My daily driver of 9 years deserves a better send-off. Stay tuned.
we were pushing our car out while you were driving around. Somebody got stuck.
Ow! Damn it!
Oh, yeah, those guys.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Maybe there's more in there than we thought.
so I should probably go get a pan.
Well, it's slowing down. It's not going to fill this, I don't think.
We got a lot of beer cans, so
I mean,
Oh, shit,
in
that
total,
one's
it's
full.
gonna cost
That's
you,
full.
what, 30 cents
yeah.
versus $15.
Sorry, O'Reilly's.